before I start going through the agenda so that we can make sure that Metro Nashville Network has an opportunity to begin our recording. At this time, I'd like to ask everybody to please silence your phones. So welcome everyone to the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting of December 21st, 2023. I think this may be winter solstice too. I'm not sure. Okay, all right. So happy holidays and thank you for everyone being available today. My name's Elizabeth Waits. I work for the Codes Department and I'll be presenting the cases that are on public hearing today. We'll be looking at maps, the site plan, and photos of the sites that are on public hearing. At this time, we do have a few preliminary matters that we would like for the board to be aware of and consider. And then we will go over some process instructions regarding the cases that will be on public hearing. So first, I'd like to announce that we've got 3 cases that are being deferred. I do not believe that anyone is here on any of these cases, but we want to make sure that there's notice to the public and the viewing audience, and to make sure that if anyone was here on that and I'm not aware of it, that you know that these cases are not going to be moving forward and will be heard at later dates. The first one is case 2023-149. That is a request for property at 3824 and 3826 Tiger Bell for a side setback variance, and that case has been deferred to January 18th. Same time, same location. One more case has also been deferred to January 18th, and that one is case 2023-154. That is a request for special exceptions regarding street setbacks and height for property located at 1805 Ridley, also known as 745 East Argyle. So that will be heard on January 18th. And then finally, case 2023-155 is a request for a special exception for an adaptive residential use at 504 East Old Hickory Boulevard. That case is being deferred to February 1st, and it will also be heard at 1 o'clock in this location. At this time, we would like to ask the board members to consider 2 items for approval on consent. These are items that have been reviewed by staff, and we recommend for approval based on the requirements tentatively being met. However, if there are members of the audience who are here wishing to be heard in opposition to any of these cases, I don't think so. I think I've had a chance to talk with everyone. But if I missed anyone and you want to be heard in opposition to one of these 2 cases, please raise your hand as I call out that case, and otherwise we will ask the board to consider approving those cases at this time, and they'll be removed from our hearing docket. Those are 2023-153. This is a request by Brian and Rhonda Walter for property at 2720 Alvinsberry Pass, Mount Juliet in Davidson County. Variance in the setback requirements in the RS-15 zoning district in order to construct a covered porch at the rear of the residence. You all have a letter of support from Councilmember Evans that we just received yesterday on your desk. And was there anyone here wanting to be heard on that? I do not think so. The other case that we would like to recommend for approval, subject to the board's consent, is case 2023-148. This is a request by Russell and Heidi Zeker. Am I saying that right? Property at 5112 Wilmer Drive for side setback variance to construct a carport with a shed. You all have letters of support from neighbors and the council member on this one, and I don't believe anyone was here wanting to be heard. Just wanted to confirm that. So at this time, we would ask the board if any of these items, if you all would like to hear them, then of course we can pull them off consent. Otherwise, we would ask for a motion to approve these 2 items.
I don't think
I did, and so there's not. Oh, that's fine.
So nobody's in opposition?
No, sir.
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, everyone, we're having a sidebar on who seconded that motion for our minutes. Okay, thank you. Sorry for that delay. So those items have been approved. So if you are the homeowners for those requests, then you may stay if you would like to hear the other applications. I'm just curious, but otherwise, you're welcome to go, and I will send you an order confirming that so that you can continue to move through the sign-offs that you require in order to get your building permit. You are welcome. I do not see any council members here today. So the remaining cases will be heard by the board, and 4 cases where there are neighbors or community members who wish to be heard with any questions or concerns related to the project. For those cases, the applicant will have 10 minutes to make their presentation to the board. The applicant will come up first. You'll push the little icon at the base of the microphone that looks like a little person. The red light will come on. Make sure to push it only one time. Crack up every time I have to give that instruction, but literally have to push it one time or we might have a glitch. The red light will come on. Say your name and your address. You have up to 10 minutes. That's in aggregate. In other words, whoever's here all together, you have just the combined 10 minutes. You may wish to save some of that 10-minute time for rebuttal. So after you make your presentation, the neighbors would have an opportunity to come up, be heard, also state their name and address, make sure the red light is on, and the neighbors will have a total of 10 minutes together to make their comments to the board. After the neighbors make comments, the applicants may come back up and respond or rebut any of the statements that were made by the neighbors, and have an opportunity to be heard. Please note, if you're a neighbor, we don't continue to go back and forth. It will be the applicants making their presentation with whatever time they reserve. The neighbors coming forward, and then that reserved time is the allotment for the applicants to respond. If there are no neighbors present today wishing to be heard, then in that case, the applicants have 5 minutes to make their presentation. And please note that we do stop the clock if the board members have questions, and sometimes they do during the hearing phase, and so that would not count against the time that you have to make the presentations that you wish to make to the board.
Elizabeth, can I clarify one thing real quick? Just that there might be neighbors here who are in favor of the applicant, and in which case they actually would share in the applicant's time if the applicant wanted to make time for them.
Okay, thank you. I hope that's clear to everyone. So basically I guess I couched it as applicant, neighbor, applicant. In fact, it's actually all parties in favor of the application, all parties who are opposed to the application, and all parties who are in favor have the opportunity to rebut. We'd like to advise everyone that the Metropolitan Code requires 4 votes in order to grant an application. And once a vote is taken on an application, any party who disagrees with the outcome may request a rehearing with this board within 60 days. Parties also have 60 days in order to file a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery Court, and all parties are encouraged to seek independent legal counsel before filing an appeal to ensure that all deadlines and procedures are followed. So at this time, we will begin moving through the items that are on the docket in the order in which they appear on the agenda, unless someone makes a motion to move an item. So I'll take my seat and we'll get started momentarily. The first case on our hearing agenda today is case 2023-146. This is a request by St. Mark's Missionary Baptist Church for property located at 3903 Milford Road, seeking a special exception to construct an addition to an existing church located in the RS 15 zoning district. The planning department has recommended approval, and there is a letter of support from the council member in the board's packet. This is the zoning map for the area and the aerial view. This is the view of the property from Milford. Milford. And this is the side view from West Hamilton Road. And here we have the site plan. So that is our presentation. If the applicants or anyone who's in favor of this application today wishing to be heard, if you would come forward to the table here in the center of the room. And you'll turn the microphone on, tell us your name and address, and then you have up to 10 minutes, but you can reserve some time. Yes, sir, down here, have a seat, and you have 10 minutes and can use some of that time to respond to the folks who want to be heard in the opposition to the case.
Good morning. I'm Pastor Kenneth Richardson with the St. Mark Missionary Baptist Church in Nashville, Tennessee. We are attempting to construct a fellowship hall so that we can properly fellowship and basically it's straightforward. We're just going to add on to the existing property, existing structure. And our contractor is actually here with us today if you have any questions for him. But that little green area, I wish I had one of those little markers. The little green area is kind of where we're going to be. Is it clear what you all looking at? Or not clear? Okay. Man. Building. Where it says building, to your left is where we'll be constructing. We'll be adding on from that area and going right back to where it's diagonal line is going to cross. That's what we're going to add right there.
You've got 9 minutes left on rebuttal.
You're not, are you adding, you're not adding a parking lot or anything like this regarding for the addition?
Actually, we got a little spot already.
Okay.
That's not on there. Well, we will be adding some parking.
But it's going to be on site?
It's on site.
Okay.
It's not going to be separated.
Okay.
It's on site.
Thank
We
you.
already got it.
Okay, sir, you got a full 9 minutes left for after the opposition speech. You can come back.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
At this time, I believe that we have two neighbors, or perhaps one of the neighbors who would like to be heard with concerns.
Hello, my name is Leila Ewing, and I live on the next corner from Milford Road. I live on Southview Drive on the corner.
Can you give us your street address?
3901 Southview Drive. I'm on the corner. Presently, whenever there's any other, even at church, when they have church service, or any other activity, cars are parked all up against my fence, all in front of my house, all on the street, plus in Milford Road. My concern is, based on what I just heard, I don't see how he's going to have very much parking in addition to what, the space that's there now. And when they have an event there and you're trying to get through that street, it's pretty much blocked off. And the gate to my property, if you're trying to get in there to cut the grass, you can't open it because cars are parked there. So my concern is if you're building that large building, you need much more parking space if you want to put that there. That's my concern.
Okay. Any questions? And did you want to speak to, or you just?
No.
Well, this is my daughter. She lives there as well when she's home.
Any questions?
And another question also, with the building that large, is that setting a precedence for buildings like that within that area? 'Cause that's
Well,
a-
we don't really answer questions like that, and, that's kind of I would not be an answer anyway.
So
I would say that if the zoning allows her building,
also that's totally zoning.
yeah, I mean, I looked to the zoning code, would give you better answers than we could give you about what you could build and what you couldn't build.
Okay.
Okay, any questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir, at this point, you may come forward and respond as you choose.
Good morning again. To the concern of parking, I do understand your concern about your property. And anytime that there's been a problem with parking, it was because it was another event other than normal operating tenure, like a funeral or something of that nature. I wish that I could say that there'll never be another funeral, which would be so awesome for me and for those families that lose loved ones. I will make sure that we are very cognizant of everyone, which we try to do all the time anyway. However, I would like to apologize to you and your daughter and anyone else that's been inconvenienced by these events. As far as parking goes, I did mention that we have an area already cut out that we will be making the parking lot a little bigger, but with the events that you're speaking of, it was so many vehicles, it was no way that those people just walking through, because they couldn't even stay. It was that many people. For a little child was one of them, a little child that was 10 or 11 years old. And again, my apologies, but I would do my best to make sure, and we always have security. There you go. Always. Every time we have security out there handling the traffic overflow, as well as making sure that the roads, the main road that's getting
acceptable for fire and
Yeah.
emergency vehicles.
right. I was trying to think of the fire people as well as the police and the security. Always, every time, always there.
Where are your building, where you're adding those 3,300 square feet, are you removing any parking places to?
No, sir.
No, we're adding actually.
Okay.
That area, Michael Richmond, St. Mark Missionary Baptist Church, chairman of the Deacon Board. That area you're talking about right now
Can
is
you give us your address too, please?
3903 Milford Road.
All right.
The area that's getting constructed is a grassy area right now. Its parking is about 75 to 80 feet behind that area, which we have additional parking about 100 square foot on the side of the building.
Right.
And
Which is
then
where?
Then we have an additional space, if needed, behind that 100 square foot, behind the addition, where we can go to the creek. It's about 50 feet, where we could add additional parking if necessary. But based on the concerns of our neighbors, we had a lot of death this year. And we did our best to control the traffic based on the situation, knowing that emergency vehicles had to have access from West Hampton to the other end of the road in order to perform their duties as well. And like Pastor said, again, we apologize, but we do have a limit of personnel to be in the church. So we try to keep track of the number of people that's there to control the situations that goes on in our church.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for the applicants? About how many parking places are you adding? You said you were gonna add some.
About 40 parking spaces.
Okay,
40 to 50.
Yeah.
40 to 50 parking spaces that's already cut out. It's already cut out. It's not gonna take away any parking. It's gonna add to the parking. It's a green area. There's no trees or anything there. It's just grass.
and will those be ready fairly soon, or?
Well, they'll go into construction. Once the construction start, we'll do all that construction at the same time.
So
Right.
at the time you're building this
Yes, sir.
addition, you would be doing.
We'll be adding the parking at the same time. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
When they showed the front view, they showed
Side view.
a side view and it showed the tent. And the tent is actually where we have done fellowshipping. And the tent is not going to continue to be sufficient, which is why we had to add to the building. So where that tent is, that's going to be the addition to the parking. That's going to be addition to the parking.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and discuss. This is a special exception, I'm sure everybody picked that up, but it's not a variance, so.
Yeah, I asked the question about off-site parking because I know if it's I was looking at the code, and if it's a pre-existing religious institution expansion, we're just supposed to look at the factors on section 150 and then whether there's off-site parking that's going to be added. Am I correct in that?
You are correct,
Okay.
yes.
So I just being, but I did not hear any statement that there's going to be any off-site parking as part of this. So I think we just have to look at the 150A through J. I didn't hear any, I totally get the traffic and parking concerns. I think that's a big issue in a lot of places, but, I also sort of see that as a potentially something for a group other than us to be helping resolve from a, standpoint of, what they restrict within a particular area, whether it's putting down a residential restriction or putting some sort of parameters around it that's not really our purview. So I hear the concerns, but I'm inclined to support the exception.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to the parking issue too. It's just not, I don't see it based on what our role is here. I don't see that it's something that can stop a special exception. I am glad to hear they're adding 40 places, and I hope that helps. The nice neighbor that I know has some concerns about parking, but I don't see how we can, in this case, use those concerns about parking to stop the special exception.
I mean, I agree with you, and also because it's a religious institution, but I would like to say that I appreciate that the neighbor came out, and I think it's more than just parking. Like, if you're trapped in your home and you can't leave your home, like, I think it's incumbent on the applicant to do more than just, I think that they need to tell invitees, hey, don't park in front of someone's driveway. Like, what if she needed to leave? What if she had a personal emergency and she can't leave her house? Like, I think it's more than parking. Like, you're trapping somebody in their house, and I just think that that's very, I don't know, disrespectful and frustrating. Not that it's on the I know it's not the applicant's fault, but I do think they have an extra responsibility to manage that, just like the case we heard last week, where they're building that sort of religious institution in the Hermitage Mount Juliet area, and then the applicant said that they always hire someone to handle parking. They always hire somebody to deal with traffic at the beginning and the end of an event so that they can prevent that. I think that that's sort of the responsibility of the applicant, because no one should be trapped inside their house.
Yeah, I think it's super unfortunate too, because like if we had parking enforcement that was effective to like quickly address those things, it wouldn't be an issue, but you know, that's, I don't know. Maybe that's a rant for a different day.
I mean, my comments were just more, I know that we'll have to approve it just based off the law, but my comments were more directed at the applicant to do a little bit more to ensure that their neighbor can kind of leave their home.
You know, I'm inclined to support this special exception, considering that this proposed addition is a fellowship hall. So it's an ancillary use. People in the sanctuary will then be using the fellowship hall. They're not adding to the occupant count with this addition. On top of them adding additional parking, I think that this project will actually probably calm some of the congestion concerns that the community has.
That's a good point, because I mean, the idea being the people who are at the service theoretically move
They're
to
going
the
to the
fellowship hall for the event. So
They're not adding bodies to the
you're just
building.
you're just giving a different space for the party than for the worship.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I have a motion to approve the special exception.
Okay, there's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second?
Second. Okay, there's a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Okay, that passes 5. Thank you, applicant. Thank you, opposition.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
And I will send you all a copy of the order, whoever's listed on the application, so that you may continue with the remaining sign-offs for your building permit. And thank you all for being here today as well. Case 2023-150. This is a request for property located at 1711 Sevier Street, seeking a variance from the maximum height requirements in order to construct a second story to an existing detached garage in the RS5 zoning district. The maximum height permitted is 16, and the applicants are seeking to increase the height to 26.5 feet. Board members, on your desk, today we received a letter of support from Councilman Cap. There is also a corrected application because I had previously marked this as also being an item D appeal, but due to the size of the structure, that was a notation added because of the minimum setback line that's marked on the site plan is actually closer in than what it actually is based on the size of the structure. So all that to say, it's strictly a variance. It's not an expansion to a non-conforming structure. And then the applicant has submitted a packet to you all, which those are the photographs that you'll see on your desk. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to this case today? No, there's not. And so at this time, the applicants may come forward and you all will have 5 minutes to make your presentation. I'm sorry, I actually need to show our slides to the board. So please go ahead and have a seat and just give me a few more moments to show some photographs. So this is our zoning map and the aerial view of this neighborhood. here is a photo of the entire lot. So to the left, you'll see the principal structure, the home on the property, and then to the rear, you can see behind the fence, just the top portion of the garage. And then here is a photo of this garage, which is the subject to the height increase request today. And then this is a photo of where you can see closer the principal structure. As I noticed in the packet that the applicant provided, and of course we'll let them speak to that, but there are some similar photos that I took because there's an alley that runs behind this property, and some of the rear structures as well as residential dwellings back there are sizable structures. So this photo is intended to illustrate that. The photo to the bottom right, that is the rear structure that is next to this structure. So you can sort of see directly behind that fence to the bottom right that that's the garage I just showed you. And then this is their immediate neighbor. Here's another photo of some rear structures along that alley. And then here you can see some other rear structures that are behind fences in the alley there. This is the site plan, and I've just got a zoomed in view here of the garage portion of the plan. And then at this time, you all may make your presentation.
Hello. Okay. My name is Drew Pender, 1711 Sevier Street. This is my husband, Raghu Pender. Thank you for taking the time to hear our case. We respectfully ask that you consider a variance on our property located at 1711 Sevier Street, Nashville. We would like to build an office and storage space above our garage, but we're running into two code restrictions. The unique characteristic of our house and garage is that they both have flat roofs. This prevents us from building a second level on the garage without exceeding the vertical height limit code. We could build the structure with a pitched roof and stay within the vertical height limits, but this violates the code that requires accessory structures to have the same style roof as the main house. So we're asking for a variance on either of these codes, the vertical height limit code or the code that pertains to the pitch of the roof. Our neighbors on both sides are in support of our build, and Clay Cap, our councilman, is also in support of the modification of our structure. The proposed structure in no way detracts from the aesthetics of the neighborhood, nor harms the public welfare, and keeps it within the context of our neighborhood. We've taken some pictures or photos to illustrate, I guess, the context and where we live, basically. So Raghu can kind of speak to that. He took the pictures. It's my husband.
Raghu Upender, 1711 Sevier Street. I took these pictures not knowing that there would be other pictures presented, but again, the first page shows our garage to the right and the main house to the left. And then in the background, you can see two structures of our neighbors where they've built second levels on their accessory units. So our proposed building would be of the same size as our neighbors. And there are some additional pictures of the neighborhood, which, if for your interest. And there are structures along the street as well, 1711 Long. It's a white and black building, and they have an accessory unit in the back. So if we were to do a pitched roof, it would look like that and would not in any way stand out as an oddity in our neighborhood. So we included potential drawings of both a pitched roof building as well as a flat roof on the last page. Both of those structures would exceed, if you're looking at the entire vertical height, it would exceed the 16-foot. But the eaves, if we use the pitch roof, the eaves would stay within the vertical limit of 16 feet.
Did you all build this house, or did you all move to the property?
We bought the house a couple of years ago. It was already built this way.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions for the applicants? And there's no opposition here, as I recall, right? So,
And the intent is to never use this as a dado, right?
Correct.
Or a short-term rental.
Correct.
So when it says washroom on the plan, that doesn't include a shower and tub, correct?
Correct.
As matters, aren't daddies, I think, are prohibited in this? Yeah, okay.
Yes, my notes say this is RS5, UZO, no dados.
Thanks.
okay, well, if there are no further questions, we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
Oh, I have a question, sorry.
Oh, okay. If you'll,
All right, so
we have one question here from Mr. Cole.
And then reading through the packet, it said that you all need access to the office when your home is being used as a short-term rental, correct?
Correct.
So are you all running like a home business out of it or something like that?
It's a short-term rental.
The main house is the
main.
short-term rental,
Uh-huh.
and so the office would be for our personal stuff as well as, managing the property.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you all. We'll close the public hearing and discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that this was a pre-existing structure and the fact that, that it's,
Not self-imposed.
well, yeah, and they're locked in by a requirement on one hand that says it has to match the roof of the existing structure. On the other hand, a requirement that, would force them to have something that didn't match the existing structure. I mean, I think it definitely makes it impossible to comply with the strict letter of the code. They're either, they've got to seek a variance one way or the other to be able to construct this. And they would otherwise be able to do it if the pitch of the roof, allowed them to do so. So, I mean, I think they've demonstrated a hardship with respect to the nature of the property and because they didn't construct the house. And so they didn't sort of build this knowing that that's what the code said.
So I'm a bit conflicted on this case because it sounds to me that if the home is being used as a short-term rental, by allowing this variance, you create a situation where they can go pretty much stay in the office while their home is being rented out. So, while it's not a dado, it's being used almost as a dado while their home is being rented out. They're able to stay on the property and go stay in the office space above the garage. I would maybe be willing to consider this if there was no washroom or toilet within the office space to kind of discourage, I guess, squatting in the office while the home is being rented out.
And I was, when I first went through the packet and I was thinking about it, I asked myself several times, like, what's the hardship? So I would appreciate either, it seems like Mr. Pepper and Mr. Bradford have a better handle on that than me. Like, what is you mentioned that they can't comply with either law. Is that what you saw as their?
Yeah, so it's sort of like one part of the code says that structure has to match the
Right.
rooftop, but another part says that you have to have, and I believe it's in the design overlay for the area, that you have to have a pitched roof
Okay.
for the accessory. So it's, as I understand it, it is, you violate one or you violate the other
Okay.
if you were to build it. So just the way this was constructed.
Is that a true hardship? You say violate one or violate the other, or you just leave it alone and don't do the project?
Well, I think that it's, I mean,
Either.
the
Because
purpose.
I know we hear a lot of cases where people want extra storage, and that's what I read as their hardship, and I'm like, we never find that as a hardship. Like, we've had people in East Nashville who buy smaller homes, and then they need storage, so then they want to build a garage on the back, but the garage doesn't fit either the neighborhood or it's bigger than what the square footage of their house allows. And so that's why I asked, like, I'm still mulling that, but when I read through it, I was like, I understand why they want extra storage, but that's more of a choice? Is that really a hardship? Like, we don't get to decide like why people want stuff. Like, many people come in before us why they want something. We normally look at, there's a condition to the land that creates some sort of hardship that prevents building. So that was why I'm asking. I'm still like thinking it, and so I thought you gave a good reason, Mr. Bradford, but that's the only reason why I asked.
Yeah, I mean, because and one thing, and I'm mindful of Mr. Cole's comment too, but I think the way it's stated, at least the way the code is it's exceptional undue hardship upon the property owner upon the strict application of the code would not be something that they could adhere to. And so, as I see it, you know, whether someone's going to sleep there or not, I mean, I think that the code tells us what can be allowed or not allowed within the structure. I think in terms of trying to dissect what someone's motives may or may not be, I don't know that that's, the law prohibits it as a dwelling unit, and if someone is dwelling in something that's not a dwelling unit, that's a codes violation, and the environmental court is available for, if there's a concern about that, to address those, and so I don't see that as necessarily our purview.
We put those restrictions on before though.
Well, and as a
condition.
Well, and I think that they are prohibited under the code from having it as a dadu, and so I think that
I agree with that.
it's not legal for them to do it, so that's, you know, but I think that they would be able to expand this and add this on top if they put a pitched roof on it, as I understand the application, they'd be able to do it. And it's because of what the code says that they're not able to. So it's sort of, if they had purchased a house that had a pitched roof on it, they could put a pitched roof on this and not even have to come to us in any way at all.
Doesn't it have a pitched roof? Isn't this the house?
No, it's that's the neighbors. It's this flat roof structure that's got.
That's that.
Yeah, it's a three-story flat roof structure with a spiral staircase up to the top.
So to Ms. Davis's point, and those are really good points, and
Yeah.
I do think we need a hardship, and, you know, I'm still getting my mind around it too. I think, to me, the only hardship I see, and I think it's a hardship, is that the unique characteristic of the property is that it has they bought into it with a flat roof. That's what I'm kind of identifying as a unique condition or circumstance of the land. And usually it's the land itself. It's there's a easement or there's the square footage of the lot, or it's an odd shaped lot. So I can't remember ever having one where we hung our hat on, okay, well, it's the unique characteristic is the building structure. But I guess I also don't know why we can't do that. And
well, and I think if the code is gonna set, you know, if we have an ability to grant a variance in the height requirements, then by its nature, you have to consider the building structure as part of it. Because, I mean, if it's a variance and it relates to setbacks, I think that makes perfect sense. But I think if it's a variance and it relates to height, I mean, there's no way other than to think about the building that's on it. So I think that's probably where this is, at least for me, in my mind, that it's a height request, and I appreciate the applicant's attempt to take what is, ostensibly a house that's a little different compared with some of its neighboring properties, and make an effort to put a detached accessory structure that comports with the design of it. But I also understand that they are in a place where they can't really comply either way. So,
Yeah, and I get that part too. That's what makes it also, I don't know, the code itself is not a hardship, obviously, but it's unique, the way it applies based on this building being there does.
yeah, I mean, because it says exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property, comma, exceptional topographic condition, comma, or other extraordinary and exceptional condition. And I think if we're looking at height, I don't know necessarily if the shape or of the lot is necessarily the thing, so then it becomes topography or other. And I think it's hard to distinguish an existing building from the dirt it's on when we're looking at that.
Well, and I get Mr. Cole's concern. I am, my thought was to make a motion and put those conditions on it, no washroom or no toilet, but then as I sit here and think about it, you know, I mean, if this is gonna be used as office space, then, you know,
Yeah.
that's part of a functional part of office space, and,
Well, and if folks are using their office space, but lawfully allowing people to stay in their home, you know,
yeah.
where else are they gonna use the bathroom?
Well, I guess Mr. Cole's concern is that, well, he stated it, that
Yeah.
if they lawfully can't allow people to use their home, but then he's concerned that, and I think the concern could extend to future owners, that it's be in a situation where but I think it also detracts from, if you want to have a home office and be out there and, you know, I think you would want a restroom and probably a sink. I mean, I think the neighbors would have the ability to report that to codes if they thought it was out of control or.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the height variance as requested due to the demonstration of the unique characteristics of the property with respect to the current existing structures and the pitched roof requirement that would render the applicant otherwise unable to comport with the zoning code.
I'll second it. So there's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So, okay, that does not pass. 2-4-3 against. So Ms. Waits will tell you, comes back, they can come back and, no, that's right, it didn't get.
This is a tie vote under your rules, so it'll stay on our agenda for the next 30 days. Two members that were not present can watch the tape, become eligible to participate, or any of the members that voted today can change their vote in that 30-day period. In 30 days, we have 2 meetings, so June 4 and January 18th.
Okay, thank you all.
All right.
Does anybody need a break before we call the next case? Okay, so we'll keep going to the next case.
All right, this is case 2023-152. This is a request to construct a second story to an existing residence, which is a non-conforming structure located at 1714B Underwood. The zoning district is RS5 with a DADU overlay in the UZO. This is the zoning map. And an aerial view of the neighborhood. It's a street view of the structure there in the center. A closer view from the front. This is the side of the structure. I think this is I believe it's the westerly side. You can see there's some boarded windows there. This is a rendering of the proposed addition, and this is the site plan, which reflects the location of the existing structure. While the board hears this application, we would recommend that the board seek to confirm whether the existing structure will be demolished, and we would ask the board to consider placing conditions regarding limiting this to an expansion of the existing structure, but to not apply if there is a replacement structure constructed. Is anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to this? No, there's not, and so you all have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Good morning, Board. My name is Tiffany Maddox Ming, address 1714B Underwood Street. This is my husband, Dante Ming. I just prepared a quick, brief statement. It shouldn't take me more than a minute, but today we're seeking your favorable consideration for an item D appeal to construct a second story to our existing residence. Our intentions are to maintain the existing footprint of the home, while aligning with the established standards of the neighborhood's development. We firmly believe that the addition will contribute positively to the architectural coherence of the community, and we would appreciate your time and consideration in reviewing our requests.
Thank you. And so you're not demolishing the existing structure?
No, we're just gonna revitalize the entire property. The uniqueness of the lot is super narrow. It's a very, very narrow lot.
So the footprint is not?
Will stay the same.
Will stay the same?
Yes.
I have a codes question. So this is a non-conforming case, and why is the existing structure non-conforming?
It's not conforming as to the street setback, and the side yard setback that's there.
But do you know if, with the proposed height addition, would it be within the?
It will not increase what's there currently. It's just vertical on top of the existing footprint.
Okay, so there's no change to the non-conforming, okay.
Correct.
And our standard on those, if it significantly, can you remind me of that standard again? If it increases the non-conforming?
So here, right, I mean, under 180D, you can determine the appropriateness of the proposed changes. And then under 1740, 660C, they can enlarge provided there's no increase in the degree of nonconformity.
And so that it won't increase the violations now or the setback?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, they're not in any way going closer to the road, or they can't go any closer to the property line to the other direction.
There's no zoning requirement that would, there's no lot coverage issue?
No, sir.
Okay.
And Joey, I had a question because of something Elizabeth said in her introduction. If their contractor gets in it and then realizes maybe the structure can't sustain the top addition, then the condition is that our approval doesn't allow them to kind of rebuild it brand new.
Yes, and we've had a case similar to this that occurred.
Yeah, I remember.
And so this is a good teaching opportunity for all parties involved, including the appellants here. So if you guys get into the rehab of the structure, and structurally it's just, the contractor tells you, I've got to take it down to the foundation, come back here, because you'll need to get approval, unless this board grants you to go back on the same footprint. Once you take that structure down to foundation, it's gone. And there's no grandfathering locationally for single-family residences. So you'd have to get this board's approval to demolish and rebuild on the same footprint. So that was the point of Ms. Waite's question is, this is, you're going to leave the walls that are there. We're going to rehab, we're going to, support them or, upgrade them if we have to support the weight of the second story. But if you take the walls down to the foundation, then that, you've lost these setbacks here, and you'd have to get seek reapproval for this location. So.
Clarifying question, Joey, and that's the exterior walls, correct?
Correct.
And is it all 4 exterior walls, or is it like?
Well, the code talks about destruction of more than 50% of the residents. So we've generally allowed two walls to be there to remain to do that. So. It's kind of it's a call that I have to make is like, yeah, that's 50% destruction or not. But it's sort of a fact-based dependent. So if you get into the situation, please call us. Let's come out and look at it before you remove those walls so we can find where that magic line is that you don't cross.
Yes, sir, and I appreciate that advice. The house is in pretty bad condition, so it will need to be remodeled pretty extensively. We felt as though the foundation, we're gonna do what we can do to make sure that it can support the second floor. So I don't know if there's anything that we could request or that we could ask just now that says, I hear what you're saying, make sure that 50% of it pretty much stays up. Our objective is not to try to circumvent any type of rule. It's just the lot is extremely narrow. So if we were to demolish it, it would actually make it almost worse if we were to try to go with the current code, because we go closer to our neighbor. It would like change it and make it kind of like less like what's there, the surrounding rehabbed homes. So I don't know if we could ask for.
Well, this board couldn't grant you permission to take it down. So just if we ran into that situation, you'd have to file a new appeal to seek a variance for the setbacks.
Okay, so the renovations, I hear what you're saying in terms of the walls, making sure that 50% that we're not, I understand that. That's
so, not to project ahead, but if this board grants your approval to add the second story, it's to add the second story. If you get out there and hey, this is structurally not good, then work with me and we'll get you back in front of this board for a different request. I understand.
And Mr. Harkis, could you help me understand too whether there's a distinction between involuntary and voluntary destruction of that up to 50%?
Yeah, there actually in our code for 1 and 2 family, there isn't. There's not a distinction for 1 and 2 family dwellings on voluntary versus involuntary. In this instance, multifamily, there actually is a distinction. So if this were a triplex, say, then there's state law protections that would not let them demolish it. But in this case, they could seek an approval of the board. And you guys have seen those where they've come, as Christina and members of the board have been here for a little bit. You've probably seen those where we would advise somebody to come ask leave the structure, come show us what you want to build. There's what I have. Don't demolish it because it's better for you guys to see. Oh, here's what, and then you're going to go back with this. Okay, and it's easier to see that on if the house is still remaining. Once it's bulldozed, it's kind of hard to get that perspective with what's adjoining out there.
Well, and I think it makes practical sense because I think that you can once you actually look inside the walls and make the determination of whether something's going to be structurally sound, that's easier to do.
Right, and just a brief side tangent, our code's a little bit conflicted here. You all as a board have the power to, under item D, to hear cases like this. The code, but if item D didn't exist in your powers, we could do this administratively. Because it says that it allows for reconstruction within 1 year. So long, and the standard would be that I'd look at it and go, oh, is this any, what's the word that's used, not increasing the degree of nonconformity. But for your own, you've been tasked with making this call rather than me as zoning administrator make this call. So that's why it's here before you. Whether the council, and to be fair, on a third tangent, this board is unusual that you have such power. Under most boards of zoning appeals in the state lack nonconforming type issues.
So it might be helpful to read from 1740-660D. This is not about the enlargement, which is under subsection C, but under D, a non-conforming structure damaged by any involuntary means to less than 50% of its total may be reconstructed. If damage exceeds 50%, structure shall be reconstructed in accordance with all applicable provisions of this title. It says that the Board of Zoning Appeals may consider percentage of reconstruction cost in lieu of percentage of floor area damaged or destroyed. Then under 1746-60 D2, that one talks about the tornado. And then in D3, it says a non-conforming structure utilized for the single-family use or two-family use that is damaged or destroyed by any involuntary means may be fully reconstructed so long as there's not a substantial increase in the degree of nonconformity of the structure.
Okay. Any further questions for the applicants?
Not for the applicants, but another code question is they're limited in height to whatever is required by the bulk regulations
Yes.
for RS5
Yes.
zoning, and that, they're showing 35 on their drawing. I assume that's what
That would be the case. There may be another thing at work here too. Is this lot area, is it under 5,000?
1,700.
Okay, so they're limited by a second provision in the non-conforming section of the code that deals with non-conforming lot area, and that restricts this height to 35 feet in legal lots. So they wouldn't be allowed to be, just 45 feet like we see in the UZO. It is restricted in height to 35 feet.
Okay, they're nodding, so I
Yeah,
see
I'm
they
aware of
understand
that.
that. I just wanted
Yeah,
to
we had a
make
good
sure.
conversation when they came into our office to apply for a permit.
Yeah, a lot of times we see things built accidentally and wrong, so. we
Yes,
wanted to-
ma'am.
Yeah, we understand that.
Okay, no further questions. Sorry, we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
Yeah, just real quick, given the events of this past week and the tornado in parts of our county, that's why you don't see those cases come here. Because as Ms. Waits talked about, involuntary damage allows us to just issue a permit back on its original. If the tornado had gotten this building, we'd let them build that back. Now, the question may become one-story versus two-story. If you had a one-story house and now you're wanting a two-story house, I might bring those back here to because it is really a functional difference of what was there. But the idea is we let you replace what you lost.
Well, I appreciate their effort to try to, utilize the existing structure and expand what's there. I don't see any expansion of the nonconformity since they're just going up and not out at all. So seems to be fairly clear cut with respect to the item D standard to consider.
Well, I agree. I'll make a motion, we approve it. Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, that passes. Thank y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, last case.
All right, this is 2023-156. This is a request to get a variance from the rear setback and also design requirements in order to construct an open-air portable kitchen in the MULA zoning district for property located at 921 Woodland Street. So this is right in the 5 Points area at the corner of McFerrin and there's a alley that runs like parallel between Main and Woodland.
So we have what do we have going on here? A side setback and
It's a rear setback variance request, so the structure would be located within the 20-foot rear setback. There's a retaining wall that I will show you for the principal structure at 921, the corner structure which faces Woodland. And then there's also a requirement about 60% of frontage, which Mr. Hargis would be able to speak more in terms of the specificity with that design requirement. But I noted in the application that they were asking for relief from that as well. And so this is a photo of this site. You can see a little bit of the retaining wall here. this photo is on the opposite side of McFerrin, and so it's, I'm looking like toward downtown. And you could see the alley there. So this is the opposite side of the parking lot. So here I'm facing toward, like, I guess east or, and so you can see the retaining wall here. And then there's a parking lot up above that retaining wall that is adjacent to the principal structure at this address. Oh, I've got an update that my computer wants to do. Let me beg it not to. And here's the site plan, and then I've got here for you enlarged photo, just the rear portion of the site. So you can see here, this is the whole property, and then up to the right at the top corner of the parcel, you can see this area that I've zoomed in on here, which is the area proposed for this open air kitchen. And so no one else is here, so presume that we do not have any opposition. And so at this time, then, if you all would please state your name and address and make your presentation.
Yes, Jay Fulmer, 2002 Richard Jones Road. Joe, may I ask a procedural question before time starts? In the event that somebody votes against us, I know we go on to the next docket. Is that going to be another public hearing where those members absent can ask questions?
No, they watch the video and vote. I send them the video and they have the option to watch the video. And of course, I send them the record. So we ask them to review those things. Ultimately, there is an opportunity that someone is not able to review those things before the meeting. And so those two, I think, of course, Mr. Cole is not able to vote on this one. So we've got two other people who would receive those materials in that case and have the opportunity, but they would not, the board could make a motion on its own volition to continue the public hearing. But if there's already been a vote on it, then we have to make sure in that case that the other people do also review the video, or in that case, you've got two public hearings and then people who've only seen part of the record potentially being asked to vote. So the only way to make sure that everyone has the full record, in front of them for your question, I think, it sounds like you may be, trying to determine whether or not you would prefer to request a deferral. I will tell you that that we may have some people out on January 4th as well.
Right.
And so I would just recommend that, you might want to consider the next meeting, the second meeting in January, if that's what you determine.
It's hard to say who will be. I mean, that January meeting too, that's kind of a holiday time of year. But I will say the board has been very good about members that aren't here watching the videos.
Sure.
For what it's worth. That's been my experience, so.
I don't know if it's ever common practice. I serve on the Stormwater Committee, and whenever we're in disagreement or it looks like we might not all be in agreement, we typically allow the applicant to defer or make a motion to defer. So I don't know if y'all ever do that, but if it could be considered.
We've done that. I mean, I think that that we've had situations where it appears to the applicant that it might be to their benefit to defer based on comments of the board, and we can entertain a motion to, defer.
Sure. That'd be great. Thank you.
And the two people who are out today, one is sick and with something that could potentially still cause an issue on January 4th, I'm not sure. And then the other person has a sick child. I don't have any other information. So, just wanted to be clear that I'm not able to confirm their attendance.
A word of caution about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, too. You still have to get, for a deferral, you still have to have all four votes.
Right.
And if you didn't get all four votes for the deferral, then if you didn't get all four votes for having the application approved, then you would automatically come back. But I just want to qualify. I can't speak for,
sure.
We have certainly in the past voted for a deferral, but it would take four votes, correct, Ms. Waits?
For the deferral, no, I don't think so. That's just for an affirmative decision. So the deferral would just be based on simple majority. So, you would have to have 3 votes to be able to defer it.
So we'd have to have 3 votes for a deferral.
Got it.
Okay.
Well, we have a lot of uniqueness or very strange aspects of this application. I've also had Patrick Napier with me and Matt Sutton, who's the architect of record on the project, who offices in the basement of the building that's right adjacent. And I brought some aerial photos as perspective with little red outlines of where we're trying to put this structure. But one of the interesting things is we debated a pre-manufactured kitchen is the most economical way to build this, and we need something to screen it. And we want structures across the top of it, like cross-member structural support, which now makes it a structure instead of a fence. If it were a fence, we would be coming to you for increased height because the heights of those pre-manufactured kitchens is higher than the allowable fence height. So that's kind of an odd perspective of it. The site does have topographical constraints as you go up and down McFerrin. There's a little bit of a retaining wall that holds up the parking lot. There's obviously the 10-foot retaining wall that's along the alley. The area where this is proposed is currently, the majority of it is currently the refuse collection area, which is screened. And so we're not building obstructions that don't necessarily not exist today. We're having some remnant area where we can keep trash collection in the same enclosure. And so that function won't be displaced anywhere else. The owner of the architecture firm that operates out of the basement is the one proposing to be the owner of the structure. And so he's very familiar, with just the trash generation from the bar restaurant above and of his own office.
So and let me stop you before I forget. So the bottom of the existing building is an architecture firm?
Correct.
And what's the main floor? Is that a restaurant?
Restaurant bar.
Okay. And this is going to be operated and owned by the restaurant owner? Not
No.
by the architect?
It'll be owned by the same owner as the architecture firm, separate entity, but, and then it'll operate as a takeout.
So it's
walk-up
not like
takeout.
an expansion of the Lakeside Lounge, but okay.
And does Lakeside Lounge lease this property?
Yes.
Okay.
They
And
do.
does the architecture firm own the property? Is that?
Well, the owner of the firm is one of many owners in the LLC of the property.
And so they're not connected in
No.
Okay.
They were hired to do the plans.
Gotcha.
He'll hire another firm for that.
We got you.
While we're asking questions, it's referred to as a portable kitchen. What is portable about it?
The fact that it comes construction, it's sort of pre-manufactured out of sight. It could move. The intent is for it not to move. But in the event that it's unsuccessful, they could move it and sell it to somebody else to place on another property. So it wouldn't just sit there vacant. A third interesting part of this is not necessarily the strange shape of this parcel, but of the adjacent parcels along the alley. Attaboy is a bar that's on the north side of the alley, and it faces McFerrin. And so the alley property line is actually a side property line for it. On this property with dual frontage, it can be up to the zoning administrator. The property lengths are fairly the same length, and he can use discretion on which one to call the front, which would make our western property line a rear, but we have an existing building, and so that would create a non-conforming structure. So naturally, our rear setback is along the alley. But the property on the opposite side of the alley property line is actually the side property line. And when you go on the east side of McFerrin, the building that is along the alley, that is also their side property line. So of the two adjacent properties at this intersection, we're the only one that have a rear along the alley. Another interesting aspect is this alley is actually very pedestrian activated. There's a lot of, with the architecture firm that's in the basement, a lot of the restaurants that are up on Main Street, the bar that's across the street whose main entry actually faces the alley, there's just significant pedestrian activity up and down it. And so having this located in that rear portion is just really makes sense for the vitality of the operation. The council person rezoned this property in 2020 along with the rest of Woodland Street, and a lot of that was due to an expiring MDHA overlay. And so this property used to be CS, which would have had a 15-foot setback. Now it's MULA, which has a build-to zone and facade extent requirements along the property line. We're supposed to build a building that addresses the corner and extends 60%. of the property lines. Placing the structure where it is proposed will allow a future development to occur, but obviously a structure of this size will not satisfy that requirement regardless of where it could be placed. So when they bought the property and when it was converted to the architecture firm in the basement, that predated that zoning. So that's something we inherited with the mass zoning of the street. I believe that you should have on file a letter of support from Councilman Cap. We were told he sent that in yesterday, so we hope that that made it into your files.
That's correct. And there's also a letter from Councilman Withers on your desk that
great.
Mr. Cap incorporated, which was something he previously submitted. I don't want to take your time, but yes, those letters are there on your desk.
Yeah, we had talked to Councilman Withers when he was still in office, but we weren't going to try to push this through in his final months. We wanted to wait and talk to Councilman Cap as well. I know we're running short on time, but I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have, and if you have any questions of the architecture or otherwise. I also wanted to point out that the structure is, the corner of the existing wall at the dumpster enclosure is 14.5 feet from McFerrin, which is the measurement you use for site visibility. McFerrin is a one-way street going north towards Main Street, and so any structure that's placed here, as long as it's within that footprint, will not obstruct site visibility for a car leaving.
And the structure is proposed to be how far off the property line?
It is about 4 feet off the property line, which will allow for the hinging of the doors to open for when they have to get the trash out.
Do you know how wide the alley is?
The alley is 20 feet. And I'm happy to walk you through any of the.
Will it be taller than the retaining wall that's there and looks like a wooden fence?
I'll let Matt speak to that. I don't believe it's going to be any taller than the fence, but it's, do you know the approximate height?
It's going to depend on the height of the kitchen that we purchase. As drawn right now, it is taller than that retaining wall to the rear, or to the parking lot side, to the south of the drawing on screen.
Is that a one-way alley or a two-way alley?
It's a two-way.
Two-way, okay.
And it's unique in the fact that it does have several buildings that exit out onto it because it's about 10 feet lower than Woodland Street. And it's also about 10 feet higher than Main Street.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and discuss. Well, I mean, I'm looking for the hardships, or the unique circumstances. I mean, I will say that the alley looks as wide as McFerrin, which is, it is.
As someone who lives over there, I live very close by and drive down McFerrin and use that alley. It is very narrow, and it's not just pedestrian traffic. There are a lot of car traffic because I think people have to remember that alleys' initial purpose is to be an alternative. When you're in a densely populated area, they allow for access, multiple access points in and out of the neighborhood. So, yeah, you're right from your perception, as someone who's driven both. I said you're right in your perception as someone who drives both.
Yeah,
Yeah, anybody correct me if I'm not right, but I'm familiar with that area too, and I'm pretty sure that's a one-way on McFerrin, so it's not a wide street.
It's not wide, yeah, it's a one-way, and then you have a bunch of businesses that are right off of it, so there's a lot of, and now that they've put the UPS store at the end of McFerrin and Main, there's even more congestion and getting in and out of Main there.
I've played a bunch of shows at the Basement East, and if my recollection is correct, like 2 cars can pass that in that alley just based on the width of it, I think.
I mean, whenever I try to pass somebody, I don't think, I always have to pull off to the side to, like, I don't think 2 cars can pass.
But it's not like one of those.
No, it's not like crazy narrow, but no, I don't. I don't think it's wide enough for two cars to pass. I think if you have two small cars.
Yeah.
But if you drive an SUV or a truck or.
Right.
For me, the, I guess, interesting or hardship type of thing was that you mentioned this is the only, did we close the public hearing?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
If you have a question, we can open it back up.
If that's okay.
Okay. Anybody
Kind of
like
a
to open up
question.
the public hearing?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Open it back up.
Maybe it's more a comment. From what I remember is that there was a statement that this was the only property that has the alley as the rear setback. Other properties had side setbacks along the alley.
Correct, the property to the north and the property to the east.
Yeah.
And so unique shape of property in the past has been accepted as a hardship. Ours isn't necessarily unique, other than the fact that the other properties don't go all the way from Woodland to Alley. Like the property on the east is bisected, therefore it only has frontage to McFerrin. If we had frontage to McFerrin, then our structure would meet the 15-foot front build-to zone. It wouldn't meet the 0 to 60, the 60% frontage width. But the topography is also another challenge in hardship to having a walk-up, take-out situation that doesn't have an indoor facility. We're not able to put it along that McFerrin frontage due to the change in topography from the sidewalk and the steepness of McFerrin. So I should have been a little more clear on what we were presenting as hardships. The others are gray as far as whether or not you would want to just consider those unique characteristics or, whether you'd want to try to reach and say they're hardship.
How far are you into the side setback?
If it were a side setback, it'd be 0.
Setback, I'm sorry.
I don't have a dimension, but I believe we're about 3.5 to 4 feet off of it to allow the door swings and off the property line. So
you're within the setback unless the doors swing open.
no, we are encroaching about 16 feet into the 20-foot rear.
Okay.
If it could be deemed a side setback, then we would be compliant and we wouldn't be here.
I got you.
And if it were right now, there's about an 8-foot tall fence around the dumpster enclosure. And so we're really just asking to pop that up another 4 feet and put cross members on it. But the structural support on the roof triggers it into being a structure and not just a fence.
Okay, so, yeah, I think I understand. If you oriented this and just turned it to the side to face McFerrin, you wouldn't have to be here. Is that right?
We would on this property because we have fronts on McFerrin and on Woodland.
Oh, okay.
Since
Yeah,
we have
well,
double frontage, we have to have a
Right.
side and we have to have a rear.
Okay,
If we subdivided this property in half, or if our property didn't go all the way to Woodland,
yeah,
then the rear would be the western side. It would not be the
Right.
alley.
okay.
I don't know how this will go today, but for me, I would have liked to have seen an exhibit that showed all the other properties in the area that had the side setback applied to the alley side. And I think that would be a helpful exhibit, but I don't know how.
Elizabeth, can you go to the parcel viewer slide that you had? So you can see the one at the southeast corner of the alley in McFerrin. It is the northern, that lot is essentially split between the alley and Woodland. So McFerrin is its front and the alley is the side. Its rear would be back there at the 170. The bar to the north of us, it faces McFerrin, so its rear setback is where that 33-foot dimension is. The alley is its side setback. And so it's odd that our rear faces their side. There was a period where there was deemed the definition of rear setback talks about where two sides meet. And so our zoning code is unclear on how to determine what the rear is, but it's been the historical practice that you have to have a rear. But by definition, it could be interpreted that you could have two sides.
Those were all the questions I had. I don't know if you want to close Close the hearing.
Sure, any further questions? Okay, we'll reclose and close the public hearing and continue the discussion.
Yeah, I appreciated the clarification that in your questions about the setbacks, because I mean, I think it did the applicant, I think, a service because, I mean, I do think that there is a very unique thing about how the setbacks are calculated on this property. I also think that this area generally is very odd in terms of what's facing a street frontage, what's facing the alley, what's facing other locations. And that you have structures that have been there for a long time as compared with stuff that's been newly constructed, and it seems to be all over the place.
Does anybody object to reopen the public hearing for other questions? Okay. So, question, if you moved it, this is a rear setback, that's technically what it is. If you moved it 16, if you kept it oriented the same way and moved it 16 feet in towards the property, you'd go over the retaining wall there, right? And you'd just be kind of in the parking lot.
Correct. You'd be buried into the wall, essentially. And then you would be lower than, if you matched the elevation of McFerrin, then you'd be 6 or 7 feet higher than the alley. And so you'd have no good way for pedestrians to approach the to-go window. And also in these aerial images, I'm hoping that you can see that the building across the street is also right along the alley. So it would have that same plane as far as how it addresses that side of the alley.
So your position on the hardship, if you were to move it to comply with the rear setback, your position is that creates a hardship because you're then essentially off the alley and you've got this, you got the retaining wall with topography, so people couldn't access it, I guess, unless you built, modify the retaining wall and put steps in there or something.
And ADA compliance would be a major challenge due to the change in topography in such a short distance.
Okay, I appreciate that. Any more questions while we have it? All right. So we'll close it again and discuss. I mean, it seems like a hodgepodge of a lot of different stuff, just looking at these aerial pictures. And by the way, thank you very much for these pictures there. We always appreciate it when people make it easier to see. I'm still trying to get my arms around what the hardship is. I get that they could, I mean, you could have this restaurant if you moved it 16 feet in. So I suppose that, and their position is that you can't really do that because of the existing topography and the retaining wall. And I mean, topography is a hardship. You'd still be able to access it off McFerrin. And I do have some concerns about, I do think it's a wide alley, but I do have some concerns about essentially a restaurant oriented towards an alley where you have pedestrians and folks come in, and if it's a good restaurant with good food and people, it becomes popular. But I'm really conflicted too, because I see this, if I lived in that neighborhood, I would think this is a great,
I actually don't think that as someone who lives there, but that doesn't matter. That's irrelevant.
Well, and
you're right, it is irrelevant, but it does make me struggle with it just because I think it's not like they're putting in a dump site or something that nobody would want, but it is, I'm struggling with the hardship. And
well, I will tell you, when this first came on our docket last year, and I was surprised when it was withdrawn. I spent a lot of time looking at it, I struggled too finding the hardship. And when I looked at it again 2 days ago, it was like, just reminded me of what I have not gotten to say in a long time about certain horses and certain courses. A lot of this is about choices and an awareness of what your property is and trying to fit a square peg in a circle hole. And so for me, given the congestion and the alley and McFerrin, I don't see a hardship other than it being self-imposed by what they've chose to put here. And so for me, it's hard to get on board with it when we're sort of grasping, not grasping, but like we're saying this is the hardship, but some of it to me just looks like, is this really a hardship or is this a hardship created by the choice? So.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the only thing I'll point out is that Attaboy, which is the bar across the alley, that has an entrance from the alley. I mean, I've been there several. Right, it's got them from both sides.
That door's not used. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to talk.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got to have 4 votes. I think you see what's going on up here. If you wanted to ask for deferral, you could. I know you had some concerns about the fact that there's 4 members here now. You have to have 3 votes for it, but that's your.
If we do request deferral and it's a 2-2 vote, then does it go back to a motion or does it die?
If you don't get enough votes, it comes back automatically within 30 days.
Well,
No, the other members get to view the video and it's.
Well, the deferral, if the deferral motion fails,
then it'd be put to a vote.
Then I think you have to go to a vote and see where you are.
And then,
Okay.
If you get a deferral, then you get to come back whenever we have the option of deciding when to defer it. We usually talk with the applicant.
Sure.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Waits, but then you get to have another they get to present their case again without having everybody look at it on video.
So you all could make a motion to hold another public hearing. The only potential concern that I could see coming up would be if someone, for, reasons that we can't control, didn't have an opportunity to look at this video, but did attend that public hearing, they really wouldn't be able to vote because the rest of the board would have evidence in front of them. It wouldn't be apples to apples at that point. So there are just some unknowns. Yeah.
We have the ability with this, so we're not up against a contractual period. We would love to advance the project, but it's not like they have to buy the property or not in 30 days. So
I think
we would love to.
some of the points that have been raised might help, give them an opportunity to bolster their position.
Sure.
Bolster your position a little bit, at least among, in addition to having potentially 3 other members here, so.
We would.
Oh, right, excuse me.
We would love the opportunity to defer with another public hearing.
Great, and you can have the public hearing if you defer, but Ms. Wade, the point she's making is that the other members, to participate, they would not only have to show up for when it's deferred, but they'd have to watch it online.
Right.
Now, there's no obligation that we do that, but this has been a pretty hard, diligent board in my experience, and generally people will watch the video.
And if they haven't, then we could defer again if we needed to.
If you have the votes, yeah.
Right.
I will say, and anybody else can chime in, I don't mean to speak, in my experience, we've been pretty good about deferrals. I mean, if people have wanted to defer. Now, if they bring a bunch of people in here for a public hearing, we've had some issues before where, a lot of people show up to oppose something and they want to defer it. Y'all don't have that problem.
Yeah.
That's a game.
You don't have any opposition, so, do you have a sense of how long you want it deferred until?
To the next meeting.
Which is
January the 4th. And I know that we have one member present who won't be available. And I was going to ask Ms. Davis if you know that whether you will be available January 4th. Okay, probably.
We could.
And I'm not, I don't know if
Yes, right. I know that you're not available and someone else. Oh, it's Mr. Cole. So that wouldn't impact this case.
We can defer to January 18th.
Till when?
I'm guessing the next meeting after.
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we defer this matter 2 meetings to January 18th.
Okay, I'll second that.
With a new public hearing.
Okay, and I'll
Thank
second that. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of deferring it till January 18th? Okay, so y'all are deferred till January 18th.
Thank you all.
Thanks again for these. These are really.
Well, we're
very,
going to
very
have better
Appreciate it, yeah.
the next time we come back. Okay, sure.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all right, we're adjourned. All right.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.